finally happened. After years of waiting, we are finally getting not only a much needed port, but a remaster of Chrono Cross. I already said this in another video, but this is my favorite game of all time. Me and many other fans have been waiting for this to happen for years. And as such, I had to make a special video dedicated to analyzing Chrono Cross's English localization. Hello everyone and welcome! This is Localization Addict, I'm Hagane, and today we're celebrating the new Chrono Cross remaster by making a video on its English localization. Beware, I will include spoilers of the game in this video. So, without further ado, let's get started. Japanese has a very unique way of showing character quirks through the manipulation of language. It is for this reason that replicating the exact tone of an original Japanese work in English can be tough. Be it the rather extensive use of yakuwari go, literally role language, or the different levels of politeness in a given character's speech, there are always tricky issues for translators of this specific language pair. Chrono Cross is, of course, no exception. Here, I will be sharing with you the translation choices I found most interesting, as well as explaining the difficulties behind the process. I would like to start by talking about the co-protagonist, Kid, and her way of speaking. I briefly covered her case in my video on dialects in video games, which I invite you to check out if you haven't. In Japanese, she talks in an extremely masculine, crude way. This is evidenced by her changing the E of E adjectives into a double E sound. You can see her doing this on the screen right now. Her use of the first person pronoun ore, her use of the word ending particles zo and ze, her use of the verbal prefix bu, among a plethora of other such things. These features that I just mentioned are very distinctly Japanese and incredibly difficult to transpose to English. The localization team dealt with these problems by making her speak in a crude Australian accent. As I mentioned in my video on dialects, this choice was not only risky but rather insensitive to speakers of this variety of English. However, I do understand that one way or another, her personality has to be apparent just from the text. I do feel like the crassness of her way of speaking fits her 100%, especially in the amount of swearing she uses. This is regardless of the fact that she technically doesn't curse a lot in Japanese. But this is mainly because cursing in Japanese isn't as much of a thing as it is in English. Personally, I could also have seen her as an English hooligan or someone from the Deep South in the US, just to give a few examples. If we are talking about characters with a wacky or unique way of speaking, we can't leave Salt and Pepper behind. Even just looking at their names, you can see how eccentric they are. Well, guess what? They're just as uniquely wacky in Japanese, and I'll show you why. First of all, Salt and Pepper's original names are Sugaru and Soruton. As you may have guessed already, they reference salt and sugar respectively. But then why does the English version make a reference to salt and pepper instead of sugar and salt? Well, for that we need to look deeper into what it means that their names are sugar and salt. Basically, what the original is doing is creating a contrast between one character and the other. They are essentially opposites, as their bodies would suggest. However, in the English-speaking world, we are used to seeing salt being contrasted by pepper instead of by sugar. My guess is that the localization team tried to go for names that would very obviously and instantly create an image of opposite ingredients, while still retaining a certain synergy between both words. I think the names work well, even if they are not 100% true to the original. As for their way of speaking, in Japanese, Salt ends his sentences in de arimasu and Pepper in nanda. Besides making up the basis for their quirky personalities, since they use these phrases in every single sentence they say, this further creates a contrast between their characters. Salt uses polite language, he humbles himself every time he speaks regardless of who the other party is. On the contrary, Pepper uses informal language, talking down to even his superiors. This duality was mostly lost in the English localization. However, it was compensated by them using the word shake in every single sentence they utter, something I personally find hilarious. It certainly makes them unique in their own way. Moving on, I would like to address the Chrono Saga's elephant in the room, Guile and his role within the link between Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger. You might be thinking, what does this have to do with localization? Well, the thing is that Guile isn't called Guile in Japanese. His name in the original game is Arufu or Alf. Now, why is this relevant, you may ask? Well, remember Janus/Magus from Chrono Trigger? I'm sure you do. Now, I think most fans know that Guile was originally supposed to be Magus. However, this was ultimately discarded, and that's why Guile vaguely resembles him. Regardless of this, there is one theory regarding Guile's link to Magus. This theory states that Janus's cat could have ended up being turned into a human by Snef, the magician at SS Zelbes, and that human would be Guile. However, this theory relies mostly on the fact that in Chrono Trigger, Alf is the name of Janus's cat. There is another theory which states that after Magus loses his memory at the end of Chrono Trigger, according to the DS remaster of the game, which includes a new scene where he's lost and doesn't seem to recall who he is, he went by his dear friend's name as this was one of the few things he remembered. Arufu's name being turned into Guile destroys the basis for that connection to be made. I really want to understand why this was changed, but I can't find a single reason why, other than the creators of the game wanting him to have a unique English name for whatever reason. Another change that was interesting to me was in the Devas. In Japanese, the Devas are called Acacia Ryu Kishidan Shitenno, literally the 4 heavenly kings of the Acacia Dragoons. What the English localization did was take the essential meaning of heavenly kings and borrow a word that means roughly that in another language. Interestingly enough, Deva is a Sanskrit word meaning heavenly, divine, or anything of excellence. I think this was an interesting choice. They could have gone with the Latin divus or divinus, but they instead chose a word in Sanskrit, probably accidentally making it sound slightly more foreign to the average English speaker. I like this word choice because it encapsulates the meaning of heavenly king in just one word, making it easier for the audience to remember and also foregoing the problem of character limit, a problem that is almost always present in these old games. Lastly, I wanted to comment on Harley's original name and its meaning. Her original name is Tsukuyomi, which is, as some of you may know, in Shintoism, one of the 3 main gods that descended directly from the deities that created Japan, Izanagi and Izanami. He is also the moon god, which makes Harley's relationship to the moon that much more evident than it is in English. What the English localization did was give her a name that fitted her apparent physical appearance rather than make a direct reference to the moon, something which I think was a risky move to make. The moon is an incredibly important element to this character, and while it's not removed completely, the fact that her name is 100% unrelated to it feels a bit jarring in my opinion. I do understand, however, that leaving it as is would have confused a lot of players who aren't all that familiar with Shinto lore, and it's always important to consider who your audience is when you're translating a game. I do wish they would have kept her name at least vaguely related to the moon, since it's so vital to her as a character. Another thing that I found rather inexplicable about the English localization of Harley is her French accent. In Japanese, she speaks in a slightly feminine way and uses the first-person pronoun atai, which is mostly used by kids in Tokyo's Shitamachi, which is one of the low-lying parts of the city. Her use of this word draws a parallel with kid that is basically non-existent in English. I think that what they tried to go for is making her speak in a fancy way, but I think it just ends up getting lost in translation. Another thing that I found quite interesting about Harley in Japanese is that she uses kids' catchphrase "Tsukimade buttobasu," or in English, "I'm going to kick your ass to the moon," further implying a link between these 2 characters. There are a few more things I would have liked to talk about, like Doc's name's double meaning in Japanese. His name means dog and also poison at the same time, but I don't want to make this video any longer than it is already. As a side note, I wanted to apologize for not uploading in the last couple of months. I earned a scholarship to study in Japan and I've been organizing my life around that, so I haven't focused so much on making videos lately. But I hope to upload more frequently once I'm settled. That being said, thanks for watching. If you liked this video and would like me to make more videos like this, hit that like button and subscribe. See you next time!